Lyrian sat in the back corner of the classroom, her eyes low, her voice silent. She never raised her hand, never made noise, and never caused trouble. She just wanted to be invisible. But no matter how quiet she stayed, the others noticed her. Not because she was loud, not because she was strange, but because of her blood. Her people had a long history. Once warriors feared across the stars. Now they were hated, laughed at, and pushed aside. Lyrian didn't even understand it herself. She had never seen war, never held a weapon, but still, they called her the beast girl behind her back. They whispered when she passed by. Some made clawing gestures with their hands, mocking her sharp nails and glowing eyes. Some even said, she should be locked up just in case she snaps. Lyrian had learned to ignore it. To hide her emotions, if she cried, they would laugh more. If she shouted, they would say, "See, told you she's dangerous." So she stayed quiet, even when it hurt deeply. At lunch, she sat alone under a small tree near the edge of the courtyard. One wanted to share a table with her. When someone new came, they were quickly warned, "Don't sit with her, she's one of them." So they didn't. She opened her small food box, pulled out cold noodles, and ate in silence. Every bite felt heavy, tasteless. She kept her gaze down, never looking anyone in the eyes. That was one thing she'd learned. Don't challenge others, don't stare, just disappear. But today was different. A new student had joined the school. Last week, a human boy named Jack. He was friendly, tall, with brown hair and curious eyes. He smiled at everyone, even the grumpy lunch lady. And today Jack noticed her. From a few meters away, he glanced in her direction several times. Lyrian felt it but didn't lift her head. She thought, maybe he was just staring like the others. Maybe he'd heard the rumors too. But Jack didn't laugh, didn't whisper. He just watched, and Lyrian felt uneasy. In the afternoon, the class had a group project. Everyone rushed to form their teams, giggling and chatting. Lyrian stood in the corner, as always, waiting for the leftovers. She knew no one would pick her, but the teacher this time said, "Jack, why don't you join Lyrian's group?" The room went quiet. One student snorted, another whispered, "Poor Jack." Lyrian's shoulders tensed, her face turned pale. She wanted to tell the teacher no, to say she was fine working alone, but Jack simply nodded and walked toward her. He didn't look afraid. He didn't hesitate. He pulled a chair beside her and said, "Hey, I'm Jack." With a friendly smile, she stared at him, confused, unsure what to say. No one had smiled at her like that in a long time. Her voice got stuck in her throat, and she simply nodded without replying. The group task began, and Jack started asking questions, real questions about the topic. Lyrian knew the answers, of course. She was smart, always had top marks, but she rarely spoke out loud. Still, Jack gently encouraged her. "Do you know this part?" he asked, showing her the tablet screen. She slowly nodded, then pointed to the answer. He smiled again. "You're good at this." Lyrian's heart beat faster. Was he teasing her? No. His eyes didn't show mockery, just honest kindness. She wasn't used to it. The others in class kept glancing their way. One girl whispered, "Why's he even talking to her?" Another muttered, "He'll regret it." But Jack didn't seem to care. Lyrian began to speak quietly. Just a few words. He listened closely. Like her voice mattered. It was strange, new, and nice. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen, not judged. When the class ended and the bell rang, Jack stood up and stretched. "See you tomorrow, Lyrian," he said before walking away. Her breath caught. He'd said her name clearly, without fear or disgust. She sat frozen for a moment before packing her things. As she walked home under the pale orange sky, she kept hearing his voice. "See you tomorrow." It echoed like music in her mind, but deep inside, fear still remained. Would the others punish her now? Would they target Jack too? Was this just a trick? She didn't know, but for now, just for a moment, she allowed herself to hope. And that single kind sentence had cracked the wall around her heart, even if just a little. Tomorrow was uncertain, but something had changed, and Lyrian couldn't ignore it anymore. Someone had noticed her, Not as a monster, not as a threat, but as a person, and that was enough to shake her world. Jack couldn't stop thinking about her. Lyrian, the girl who sat alone, spoke softly, and looked like she carried the weight of a galaxy on her shoulders. He had only talked to her once during the group project, but something about her stayed with him. He had seen the way others looked at her, not just cold stares, but fear, disgust, and something cruel. He didn't understand why. She hadn't done anything wrong. She was quiet, smart, and respectful. So why did everyone treat her like a danger, like she didn't belong? That night in his dorm, Jack asked his roommate, Kel, a local student, "Hey, what's the deal with Lyrian? Why do people avoid her?" Kel paused, then said in a low voice, "You really don't know her bloodline?" "Bloodline?" Jack asked, confused. Kel leaned closer, like he was telling a scary story. Her people were warriors long ago, brutal ones, ancient fighters who didn't show mercy. They almost destroyed entire colonies during the War of Cinders. It took a full, human fleet and 3 allied species to stop them. Jack frowned. That was centuries ago. Kel shrugged. "Yeah, but people don't forget. Her kind may look calm now, but some say it's just waiting. Better to keep away?" Jack didn't like that answer. He didn't believe in judging someone because of history. It felt unfair. Wrong. He thought of Earth's own dark past. If someone judged him for crimes his ancestors committed hundreds of years ago, it would be nonsense. So why was it okay to treat Lyrian that way? The next day, Jack noticed her sitting alone again at lunch. Same spot, same cold food box, same hunched shoulders. She didn't even look up as others passed her by like she was invisible. Jack stood with his tray for a moment, unsure. Then he walked straight to her table and sat down. Lyrian flinched, her eyes wide. She looked around nervously, then whispered, "What are you doing?" "Sitting," Jack replied casually, taking a bite of his sandwich. "Here?" she asked, as if shocked. "Yeah, is it cursed or something?" He joked lightly. Lyrian didn't laugh. She looked at him with suspicion, like she was waiting for a trick. Jack didn't push. He just sat and ate quietly, letting her be. After a few minutes, she asked, "Why?" "Why what?" "Why are you sitting here?" Jack looked her in the eyes and said, "Because you looked like you needed company and because you're not invisible to me." Lyrian blinked, stunned. No one had ever said something like that to her before. She lowered her eyes, her voice shaky. "You shouldn't. They'll start talking. They'll say bad things about you." Jack shrugged. "Let them talk. I'd rather be alone with someone honest than surrounded by liars." A strange silence passed between them. Not awkward, but warm. Like something fragile had just been shared, she said softly, "You're not afraid of me?" Jack smiled. "Should I be?" She didn't answer. Instead, she just gave the tiniest nod of thanks, barely visible. Later that day in class, the teacher assigned a new task. Students had to form pairs for a design project. People immediately rushed to their usual friends. Jack stood up and walked to Lyrian. "Partner?" he asked. She hesitated, her heart racing, then slowly nodded. Once again, whispers spread through the classroom. A boy named Naro scoffed loudly. "Guess humans like danger now." A few laughed, but Jack ignored them. Lyrian's hands were shaking. As she opened her notebook, she tried to focus, but she felt all the eyes burning into her back. Still, Jack didn't leave her side. During the project work, Jack asked for her ideas. He genuinely wanted her opinion, and Lyrian, surprised and unsure, began to open up. She had good ideas, creative ones, based on old tech her ancestors once used. Her hands drew fast, showing diagrams and shapes Jack had never seen. "You're amazing at this," he said, truly impressed. Her cheeks turned slightly purple, her people's version of blushing. "No one's ever said that," she whispered. "Well, they should," Jack replied, "because it's true." For the first time, she smiled. Just a small, quiet smile. But it was real. Jack noticed it, and it made him feel warm inside. He didn't do anything special, he thought. He just treated her like a person. But somehow that was already more than anyone else had done. By the end of the day, something had shifted. Lyrian walked a little straighter. She still kept her head low, but not as low. When Jack waved goodbye, she waved back, Just once, just a small motion, but it meant everything. And Jack, as he walked back to his dorm, thought to himself, she's not dangerous, she's not a monster, she's just lonely. But he didn't know that things were about to get harder, because not everyone liked seeing a human and an outcast growing close, and soon someone would try to break what little peace they had found. But for now, in this small corner of the galaxy, something good had started, and neither of them would forget it. The next morning, the school buzzed with whispers. Everyone had seen it. Jack sitting with Lyrian, talking to her, laughing with her, treating her like a normal student. And people didn't like it. Some were confused, others were annoyed, and a few looked angry. But Jack didn't care. He walked into class, gave a small nod to Lyrian, and sat beside her like it was the most normal thing in the world. Lyrian, still unsure, gave him a nervous glance. She was used to being avoided, not noticed. But now people stared at her more than ever, and it made her feel exposed. Even so, she didn't ask Jack to go away. She didn't want him to go away. Later that day, the teacher announced a big team challenge. Each group will design and build a model for a community shelter, she said. You'll need teamwork, planning, and presentation skills. Everyone rushed to form groups. As always, Lyrian stood back, waiting, expecting to be ignored, but Jack walked straight to her and said, "We're a team, remember?" She blinked in surprise. "Are you sure? You could pick someone else," Jack just smiled. "Nope, I pick you." That one sentence made her heart skip a beat. He didn't say it like he was doing her a favor. He said it like he meant it. Other students noticed, and the room filled with quiet laughter and comments. "Good luck, Jack, hope she doesn't bite," one student said. Another added, "Don't come crying when she burns your project down." Jack turned to them and said calmly, "I'd rather work with someone honest than fake friends who laugh behind people's backs. That shut them up, at least for now." Lyrian sat beside Jack and opened her sketchpad. She began to draw quickly. Lines, angles, shapes of walls, roofs, and systems. Her hands moved with confidence like she had done this 100 times before. Jack leaned in and watched, amazed. "You're really good at this," he said. She gave a shy smile. "It's easier to draw than speak." "Then keep drawing," he said. "I'll speak for us both if you want." For the next few days, they worked together in the school's workshop. Jack gathered materials, measured pieces, and helped assemble parts. Lyrian designed everything, guiding him step by step. At first, she gave short instructions, barely above a whisper, but by the third day, she was explaining full plans without fear. She even laughed once when Jack cut a piece too short and scratched his head in confusion. "Wrong angle, human," she teased gently. Jack grinned. "You're teasing me now?" That's progress. As the final day of the challenge arrived, tension grew. Other teams looked at Jack and Lyrian's model and began to worry. It was solid, detailed, and practical, one of the best in the class. One group tried to copy their design, but it was too late. The teacher announced, "Time's up. Present your work." One by one, the groups presented. Some were messy, others were average. Then it was Jack and Lyrian's turn. They rolled their model to the front, and Jack began to speak. "This shelter is based on strong roots and simple strength, just like the person who designed it." Lyrian stood beside him, silent but proud. Jack explained the parts, the purpose, and the smart energy-saving methods Lyrian had come up with. At the end, he said, "I did the cutting, but she made the brain behind it." The class was silent. Even the teacher was impressed. "Well done," she said. "Very well done." Some students clapped slowly, others just stared, but no one could deny they had done something amazing. And Lyrian, for the first time, stood there with her head held high. No shame, no fear, just quiet pride. After class, a few students came closer. One girl said, "That was actually really good." Another asked, "Where did you learn that design?" Lyrian answered softly, "My grandmother taught me." They nodded, unsure of what to say next, but at least they weren't laughing. It was a small change, but Lyrian felt it. They were starting to see her, even if just a little. As she walked out of class, Jack walked beside her. "You did great," he said. She looked at him, her voice calm. "We did great," He smiled. True team effort. She took a deep breath. The air felt lighter now. She wasn't invisible anymore, and though she knew not everyone would change overnight, one thing was clear: this was just the beginning. But not everyone in the school was happy about her rising confidence. In the corner of the room, a student named Naro watched them, his eyes narrow, his jaw tight. He didn't like how people were treating her better. He didn't like how Jack defended her. He believed people like her didn't deserve respect, and now he was planning something to remind her of her place, something that would shake the small hope she had just begun to feel. And next time, she might not see it coming. The day after the group challenge, things seemed quiet, almost too quiet. Lyrian walked into class feeling something new inside her, a tiny seed of confidence. She had done something good, something people respected. Jack smiled at her the moment she entered, and she felt warmth in her chest. It felt safe, like maybe things were changing. But in the shadows, someone was watching with cold eyes. Naro, the same boy who always mocked her, wasn't smiling. He was angry, jealous, and ready to do something cruel. Naro had always hated Lyrian's kind. To him, they were dangerous, untrustworthy, a stain on the school. Seeing a human boy like Jack defend her made him furious. In his mind, it wasn't just wrong, it was betrayal. He decided it was time to show everyone the truth about Lyrian. He didn't care if it was fair or not. He wanted her broken again, back in silence, head down, afraid. That afternoon, something strange happened. The school's robotics club reported that their project, a delicate drone model, had been ruined. Wires cut, parts missing, memory wiped. The club leader was furious and demanded the school check security footage. But the footage was missing too. Later, one of the teachers received an anonymous tip. Check Lyrian's locker. And when they opened it, they found small pieces of the stolen drone parts inside. Lyrian was called to the staff office. She had no idea what was going on. When they showed her the pieces, her eyes widened in shock. I didn't do this, she said quickly, her voice shaky. But the teachers looked at her with doubt. These were found in your locker, Lyrian, one of them said. She shook her head. Someone must have planted them. But their faces didn't change. Soon Jack was called in too. He looked confused. What's going on? She's being accused of sabotage, one teacher explained. Jack's eyes narrowed. That's ridiculous. Another teacher showed him the photos of the parts in the locker. We're reviewing the evidence, they said, but Jack noticed something odd. One of the photos showed a detail that didn't match Lyrian's real locker, a mark on the wall that wasn't there in reality. He raised his hand. Can I see the original video footage? The teachers looked at each other, then shook their heads. It was erased, they replied. Jack left the room quietly and returned after a few minutes with his own tablet. He placed it on the table and tapped the screen. Luckily, I record everything, he said. What? The staff asked, surprised. He played the footage. It showed Naro sneaking into the hallway late at night, using a stolen keycard, opening Lyrian's locker, and planting the parts. Gasps filled the room. The teachers watched. Silently, as Naro looked around and slipped away, Jack turned to them. Are we done here? Lyrian couldn't believe what just happened. Her legs felt weak, but she stood tall. The teachers looked ashamed. One of them finally said, Lyrian, we're sorry. We should have waited for more proof. Outside the office, the hall was quiet. News traveled fast in school. By lunchtime, almost everyone had heard what Naro had done. Some students looked at Lyrian with guilt, others with surprise. She wasn't the villain, not the monster. She was the victim of someone else's hate, and Jack. Jack had saved her again. Lyrian sat alone at her usual tree, still shaking a little. Jack walked up and sat beside her without saying a word. After a moment, she whispered, Thank you. He didn't answer right away, just looked at her and said, You didn't deserve any of that. She nodded slowly. I thought they were finally accepting me. Jack looked up at the sky. Some are, some aren't yet, but this shows who they really are, and who you really are too. Lyrian felt a strange feeling rise in her chest. Not sadness, not fear. It was something stronger, something like fire. She looked straight ahead and said, I won't hide anymore. Jack smiled at her. Good, because I'm standing with you. That evening, Naro was suspended. The school made an official announcement. They cleared Lyrian's name and explained what had really happened. Some students clapped quietly, others kept their heads down in shame. But the silence in the room said everything. Things were starting to change. Lyrian didn't smile, not yet. She knew this was just one battle. There were still many people who feared her, hated her, judged her. But now she also knew something else. She wasn't alone anymore. She had someone who believed her, defended her, and fought beside her. And with that, she felt stronger than ever before. As the sun set that day, she stood outside the school building and looked at the stars. Her people were once warriors, yes. But now she was becoming a fighter of her own kind, not with weapons, but with truth, courage, and dignity. And maybe, just maybe, others would start to see that too. The next day, Lyrian walked into school with her head a little higher. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't hiding either. After what Naro did, and how Jack proved her innocent, something had changed. The whispers were softer now, the stares a little less sharp. Some students still avoided her, but others, they looked at her with curious eyes. Not fear, not hate, just curiosity. It felt strange, but not bad. Jack met her at the entrance, like always now. He grinned. Ready for another day of suspicious stares and awkward silence? Lyrian gave a small laugh. You're enjoying this, aren't you? He shrugged. A little, but only because they're finally seeing you, not as a monster, but as someone strong. Lyrian didn't reply, but her eyes softened. At lunch, something unexpected happened. 2 students from their class walked up to her table. One was a girl named Kira, the other a boy named Mino. They didn't sit, but they didn't look cruel either. Kira spoke first. Hey, about the project you and Jack made. It was amazing. Lyrian blinked. Thanks, she said softly, unsure what was happening. Mino scratched his head. We were wondering, if you could help us with the next design task, you're really good at this stuff. Lyrian stared at them, unsure if it was a joke, but Jack smiled. Told you. You're changing minds. Kira and Mino waited nervously, but Lyrian finally nodded. Okay, I can help. They both looked relieved and walked away. Lyrian turned to Jack. This feels strange. He leaned back. That's what happens when truth spreads. People start to think for themselves. The next few days were better. Lyrian helped with the design task and the students listened. Some still looked uncomfortable, but no one openly insulted her. Even answered questions during class, something she hadn't done in years. Her voice was still quiet, but it was heard. But not everyone was changing. Some students rolled their eyes when she spoke. A few still whispered insults under their breath, but Lyrian didn't let it break her anymore. She remembered Jack's words. You're not alone. One afternoon after school, Jack and Lyrian sat outside on a low wall near the garden. She showed him her sketchbook, pages full of ideas, machines, even characters she had imagined. Jack flipped through the drawings with wide eyes. You made all of these? She nodded. Most are from dreams I had. Stories my grandmother told me. He stopped at one drawing. A tall figure standing on a mountain, arms open to the stars. This one, he said. What's the story here? Lyrian paused, then said, it's about someone who carried the shame of her bloodline. But one day she reached out to the stars and found strength, not from her past, but from someone who believed in her. Jack looked at her, his voice soft. That someone's lucky. She smiled. No, I'm the lucky one. Later that week, a group of students walked by them in the hallway. One of them, Rula, a loud and proud student, stopped and laughed. Well, the outcast and her human pet. How romantic. Jack stepped forward. His voice calm but firm. Say what you want about me, but don't talk about her like that. Rula smirked. Relax. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. But this time, something different happened. A student behind her said loudly, No, you're not. It was Kira. She stepped forward. Lyrian helped us and she's better than you at half the things you think you're good at. Rula looked shocked. You're defending her? Mino joined in. Yeah, because she actually listens, works hard, and doesn't mock people. Rula rolled her eyes and walked away, but her face was red. Lyrian stood frozen, heart pounding. Jack turned to her. You okay? She nodded slowly. They defended me. He smiled. They respect you now. She looked down, whispering. I never thought I'd see this day. That night, Lyrian sat in her room, holding her sketchbook. She stared at the page with the figure on the mountain. Then, she picked up a pencil and drew someone beside her. The figure of a human, smiling with kindness. She shaded in the stars above, brighter than before because now her story had changed. No longer just the outcast, no longer just the girl with warrior blood. Now she was someone with friends, someone who helped others, and someone who was finally starting to believe in herself. But, deep down, she knew the road ahead would still be hard. Some people wouldn't change and more challenges would come. But she was no longer walking alone, and with each step forward, she was reclaiming the life they once tried to steal from her. One small moment of kindness had started it. But now, Lyrian was writing the rest of the story herself. And this time, no one could erase her. A few days later, the school buzzed with excitement. The Unity Festival was coming, a big event held once every year. Students from different species prepared music, art, and cultural dances to show their history and talents. Every year, each race or culture got a small time slot to perform. It was meant to show peace between all species, to celebrate differences. Lyrian stood quietly as posters were pinned on walls and announcements were made in class. But when she read the performance list, her name wasn't there, not just her name. No one from her bloodline was listed, not one act, not one story, not even a mention. Her chest felt tight, her hands cold. She walked up to the teacher after class. Excuse me, I noticed my people aren't part of the festival. The teacher hesitated, then said softly, The council decided it's best not to include performances from your heritage. Lyrian blinked. Why? It might make some students uncomfortable, the teacher replied. You understand, right? No, she didn't understand. She walked away, her heart sinking. They said it was a festival for unity, for all species, but they still saw her people as dangerous, unwanted. She had thought things were changing, but some walls were still standing. That evening, Lyrian met Jack outside near the training field. She didn't speak at first, just sat beside him on the bench. After a moment, she said, They didn't let me join the festival. Jack turned his head sharply. What? Why not? She stared at the ground. They said it might make others uncomfortable. Jack stood up, pacing. That's not unity. That's exclusion. Lyrian said nothing, her voice trapped behind years of silent pain. Jack clenched, his fists. No, we're not letting this go. If they won't give you a voice, we'll make one. Lyrian looked up slowly. What do you mean? Jack's eyes burned with determination. We'll set up our own performance right outside the main stage. They can't stop us from showing your story. Lyrian looked unsure. But what if people laugh or walk away? Jack sat back down, beside her. Then we perform for ourselves. Even if one person listens, it's enough. The next 2 days were full of work. Jack used his connections to get small stage equipment, a sound system, and light panels. Lyrian practiced one of the ancient dances her grandmother had taught her. It was slow and powerful, full of meaning. Every step told a story, from loss to strength, from fear to hope. She also designed a traditional outfit using old patterns, cloth of deep violet and black, with silver stitching in the shape of stars. Jack helped set up the stage near the festival's outer courtyard. It wasn't big, but it was enough. Lyrian was nervous, but Jack stood beside her the whole time. He even made a sign, Forgotten Stories of a Misunderstood People. On festival day, students gathered near the main area, where flashy lights and loud music filled the air. Colorful banners flew, foods from many worlds were served, and performers wore bright costumes. No one noticed the small stage at first, but as the main stage got busy, curious eyes turned to the side where Lyrian stood in silence. Jack stepped forward first, holding a mic. Everyone says this festival is about unity, he said, loud enough for nearby students to hear. But one culture was left out. Again, we're here to share their story, not of war but of survival, beauty, and strength. He stepped back and the music began, slow, deep, with echoes like a heartbeat. Lyrian stepped onto the stage, her body moving with grace, her arms told a story, her eyes full of emotion. Each motion reflected a forgotten history, a song of sorrow, of lost homes, of silent courage. People began to stop and watch. Some came closer, curious. They saw something they had never seen before. Lyrian, not as a classmate, not as a girl with a cursed past, but as a storyteller, a dancer, a soul full of fire. When the dance ended, silence filled the air. For a few seconds, no one clapped, just stunned silence. Then one person began to clap, then another. Soon the small courtyard echoed with applause. Even some teachers from the council were there, their faces shocked. One of them stepped forward. Lyrian, we didn't know, she bowed. You never asked. After the performance, students surrounded her. They asked questions about the dance, her people, the meaning behind each move. She answered, calm and proud. Kira walked up and said, "That was beautiful." Another student said, "Why weren't you on the main stage?" Jack replied, "Because they were scared, but now they know better." That evening, as the festival lights faded and students returned home, Lyrian stood on the empty stage looking up at the stars. She felt something new, something strong and deep. She had finally spoken without words, and they had listened. It wasn't just about dancing, it was about claiming her place, and now no one could take that away from her again, not even the council, not even fear. She had told her story, and the stars had heard it too. The morning, after the festival, everything felt different. Lyrian walked through the school gates, but for the first time in her life, people didn't turn away. They didn't whisper insults. They didn't look at her like she was dangerous. Instead, they nodded, smiled, and some even said, "Good job," or "That was amazing." It felt strange, but in a good way. She was still quiet, still unsure what to say, but deep inside, something had shifted. She didn't feel like a shadow anymore. She felt like she belonged, at least a little. In class, the teacher paused before starting the lesson. "I want to thank Lyrian for her powerful performance at the festival yesterday," she said. Her story reminded us all why unity matters. Lyrian's heart beat faster, her hands trembled slightly, but she lifted her head and gave a small nod. The class clapped, real claps, not forced or fake. Even students who used to ignore her were clapping now. Jack leaned over and whispered, "Told you they'd see you." She looked at him, her voice soft. "I didn't think they would." He smiled. "Well, sometimes it just takes one spark." During lunch, Lyrian didn't sit at the edge of the courtyard like she used to. This time she sat at a table in the center. Jack beside her, of course, but now others joined too. Kira and Mino brought their trays over and sat down like it was normal. They started asking Lyrian about her people's traditions. "What was that silver symbol on your outfit?" Kira asked. "It's called a star root." Lyrian explained, "It means strength through silence." "That's beautiful," Kira said, genuinely interested. Mino added, "I didn't even know your people had dances like that. I thought they were just soldiers." Lyrian looked at him calmly. "That's what most believe, but we were also poets, artists, singers. Before the war changed everything. For once, no one argued, no one doubted her words, they just listened." As the week continued, more and more students approached her. Some asked for help on projects. Others just wanted to talk. A few even apologized. For how they had treated her before, Lyrian didn't forget the pain, but she accepted their words slowly, one at a time, because she understood. Fear makes people blind. But truth once seen cannot be unseen. One afternoon, while walking back to the dorms with Jack, Lyrian paused near the garden. "Do you think this will last?" she asked, her voice unsure. Jack stopped and turned to her. "You mean the way people are treating you?" She nodded. He looked up at the sky for a moment, then said, "Some will change, some won't, but what matters is, you changed, you stood up, you showed them who you really are." Lyrian looked down at her hands. "I didn't feel brave. I was shaking the whole time," Jack smiled. Bravery isn't about not being scared, it's about doing it anyway. Later that evening, the school posted a message on the main board. It said that next year's Unity Festival would include all cultures by default. No more silent bands, no more missing names. It was a small message, but a big victory. Lyrian read it twice, then once more. Her name was written under the new planning committee, and next to it, Jack's name. She found him. At the training field, practicing with the flight drones, she walked up behind him and said, "So, we're planners now." Jack grinned. "Looks like we're in charge of the fun next time." Lyrian gave a rare laugh. "I never thought I'd be trusted with something like this." Jack tossed a drone in the air. "Trust is earned, and you earned it the hard way." A few days later, something unexpected happened. The school council invited Lyrian to speak at the end-of-term assembly. At first, she wanted to say no. Public speaking scared her more than anything. But Jack encouraged her. "You don't have to give a speech. Just tell your truth like you did through your dance." On the day of the assembly, Lyrian stood in front of hundreds of students and teachers. Her legs were shaking, but she took a deep breath and began. "I was born into a heritage people feared, because of stories they heard, not the ones I lived." Her voice was quiet but clear. "For a long time I believed I was the problem. That I should stay silent, stay small, stay invisible." She paused, looking out at the crowd, but someone reminded me that my story matters, that my voice has power, and now, I believe it too. The room was silent. Then applause rose, not forced but full, loud and respectful. After the assembly, students came up to her, not out of pity, but admiration. Even a few teachers shook her hand. One of them said, "You've changed this place more than any of us ever could." Lyrian didn't know what to say, so she just smiled. That night, as she looked out her dorm window, the stars sparkled brightly above. She thought about everything that had happened. The pain, the fear, the lies, and the hope. It had all led her here. She wasn't just the outcast anymore. She was a symbol, a reminder that even those born into shadow can rise into the light. And in that moment, she knew she was no longer alone. She never had been. Not really. She just needed one person to stand with her. And now, she was standing for others. Too, a new story had begun, and this time it was hers to tell.